Welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a look at the 1960 Mario Bava-directed horror film Black Sunday, aka The Mask of Satan, and a number of other titles that you can see this movie under. This is episode 443. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship.
And
Say hello,
new
Drew.
dad.
And a new dad. Say hello, Drew.
We are choosing to go by Papa because
Papa.
it's distinguished.
I like that.
Like me.
I like that.
So distinguished.
Papa is a very fatherly, it's also, not for nothing, a very grandfatherly thing to be called. That is really, my dad goes by Papa.
That's exactly how I wanted to. Okay.
And finally,
well, I was inspired by your dad.
No, that's sweet. Also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello, everyone, and congratulations to Drew and Jamie.
It has been so nice to see all of your stories, Drew. I'm just so happy for you. It's really wonderful.
Well, thank you.
All right, and we're back. It's so interesting that's some like big changes, and here we are back discussing a gothic horror film at Halloween time. You couldn't ask for more. Black Sunday, also known as The Mask of the Demon, is a 1960 Italian gothic horror film directed by Mario Bava in his official directorial debut, and starring Barbara Steele, John Richardson, Andrea Cecchi, Ivo Guarani, and Arturo Dominici, and Enrico Oliveri, and is loosely based on a Nikolai Gogol story. The film takes place in Moldavia and tells the story of a witch who is put to death by her brother only to return 2 centuries later to seek revenge upon his descendants. So let's do it this way. Julia, we have not started with you in a while, and I know you always laugh when I say that, but it always feels true. Julia, so we'll go Julia, Drew, Tony, and then I'll go. So Julia, Black Sunday, is this your first time watching it, and what did you think?
Well, I mean, I had watched it for the podcast when we were going to record it a few weeks ago. But other than that, I don't remember. I feel like I had watched it before. It just seemed really familiar. So, but it's very spooky. It's very, what's the word for like the mood is,
evocative?
Atmospheric. Thank you. Atmospheric. It's just the whole thing of the fact that they made the set monochrome so that everything would just look dark, and then the lighting. God, there's something about this. Is why I feel like I've seen this movie before these last 2 times, because that the way that they use the high contrast and the shadows when a face appears out of the darkness, which I think is what Halloween was kind of going for, with those wonderful shots. It's just really great. I mean, it's very the mood is just so, I don't even know what the word is, but it really moves you. I mean, it feels like you're watching something of substance. The performances are good, but to me, I really feel like the design and the cinematography are doing a lot of the work. But yeah, I think it's definitely memorable in that way.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Drew. Welcome back. And it's so funny. We've been at the Sublime, which is a new baby, and we're not going to the ridiculous, but we're going into a totally different realm, which is, 50s and 60s black and white horror. It's a totally different head. So it just feels so strange to plummet down there and say, well, what are your thoughts on Black Sunday? But what are your thoughts on Black Sunday?
I think that this is obviously an important horror film because its influence is so far reaching. Aside from that, seasonally speaking, since we are in October, it is got all of the classic horror stuff that you want. It's got big spooky castles and
Wow.
fog and giant bats and coffins and at one point there's evil skeletal witch and like all the things. But also I think that this is, especially when you look at the time, a very effective horror film in a lot of ways. Like the opening sequence is still incredibly shocking, and I think a lot of the special effects hold up, particularly, well, I'm sure we'll get more into it, but the image of Barbara Steele's character, like her eyes regenerating. I'm not 100% sure how they did that, but it looks
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So what a cool movie. And correct me if I'm wrong, have we ever done a Mario Bava movie before on the podcast?
No, I don't think we've done Planet of the Vampires. I don't think we've done Baron Blood. I'm searching my brain. I don't think we haven't done Black Sunday,
Black
Black
Sabbath.
Sabbath. So no, my thinking is no. Shockingly.
So
That
yeah,
is shocking.
amazingly. So like this is a cool thing to kick off the Halloween season with, and I'm excited to hear everybody's thoughts on it.
Nice. Wonderful. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with everybody. It's super evocative movie. The special effects and set design are still super great. It's been a while since I'd seen it. I know when it showed up on streaming, however many years ago,
Yeah.
that I was like, oh, finally. There's a lot of movies that were harder to find at one point, and then now you could watch them at your leisure, and
Isn't that
this
crazy?
was one of those. And it's awesome. And really, you could, the more you watch it, the more you go, oh, this is where this kind of trope comes from, or this kind of shot that you'll see later. Like I really enjoy it. Just beautiful. Like, I mean, just that mask alone, the satanic torture mask is so well designed. There's a bunch that I want to get into as we go through it, but
Sure.
yeah, I think this is an important one, and along with Black Sabbath, and I'm really happy that we're talking about it.
Rather than go into opening thoughts, because I would just echo everything that you guys said, one of the things that I want to talk about first is is exactly piggybacking off of what you said, Tony. When I first came to Austin, Texas, in a long time ago, at that time I had been looking for Black Sunday for most of my life. It felt like, and I had been all over, like everywhere, and I could not find Mario Bava's Black Sunday on tape. And I went to Vulcan Video, and I went in and I said, because nobody had it, and I went in and I go, do you guys happen to have Black Sunday, and before you answer, I mean the 1960 Italian movie and not the blimp movie. And they go, oh yeah, no, we got two. We got the AIP version and we got the European version. And I was like,
yep,
wow. And first of all, it felt like the mothership was calling me home. And that was really just strange. I felt like I'd entered a new era. But also, that was what it was like in the 1990s. If you wanted to go find a copy of, Black Sabbath or whatever, we didn't have YouTube or Internet Archive. You had to really spend your life looking for these things. So
I mean, there were those like catalogs that were basically zines,
yes,
and they had bootlegs of almost everything, and so you could
could
probably purchase this movie and some rock and roll earrings and some movies, maybe some pictures from a car crash, like depending on which I mean, it was this weird counterculture zine, like catalog scene that anybody worth their weight in salt as far as like alternative, everybody.
No, that's a good point.
Everybody
You
in an
could go to
alternative group knows at least the one person who would, be that member in a Scream style thing, like, oh yeah, so and so has that catalog. I bet you could order. But
In
I
fact,
will say also that I felt the same. I Love Video and Vulcan Video together.
yeah,
Like if they didn't have it, it didn't exist in media at the time. And the
it's
fact
sort of
that you would do
crazy.
the same thing of like, oh, which version do you want? I was like, wait, what?
Yeah,
That's possible?
yeah.
I mean, I remember going into I think it was I Love Video, and they had, at one point in time I had the bootleg, like the TV version of Superman
Hmm.
that's longer, and
Yes.
you could rent that. And it was just like, what is this magic?
There's even a specialness, and this does relate to Black Sunday, I promise. There's even a specialness to me about the way that we tended to see a movie before the ubiquity of all the streaming services, and before you got, like, so you can get the European version or a different dub. But like, a lot of times the first way that people caught Black Sunday was in the AIP release. The same
Hmm.
guys who were releasing all the post stuff. They bought this and they did some editing, not severe editing really. They did their own dub, which is different from the one that you'll find on Criterion, and that's the one that most of us watched first. And so and a lot of times I actually like to go back to that stuff because I have a sentimental connection to it, in the same way that people have a sentimental attachment to the first American releases of the Beatles music, which was like it was rearranged. The recordings were very different. And then now that we're sort of a global planet now, if that makes any sense, if you go to Spotify and you listen to the Beatles, it doesn't sound the way it sounded when you bought a stereo LP in the 60s in the United States. So you have to look for bootlegs of those American releases.
Yeah,
And
or the dubs for Shaw Brothers movies. Like
right, right,
I love that
exactly.
I can hear the original actors, but also there's a certain like, wow, that's not how
Yeah,
the Scorpion sounds in Five Deadly Venoms
yes,
until even though that actor's like, yeah, that's me.
yes.
So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I experience that a lot. I'll miss the terrible American edits of these things. But anyway, uh, that's a pretty rabbit hole purist thing to think about. But yeah, there are many different versions of this. If you do want to see the AIP version, it is on YouTube. But there are some gorgeous, beautiful restored versions, and that's probably what we all watched. Okay, so the first thing that we were going to talk about is I mean, I don't want to walk through the plot of the whole thing, but I will give in the basic concept of the plot, and then I want to go right into something that Drew suggested, which was the influential importance of this movie. But okay, the plot basically is uh, many years ago in this European country, a witch was put to death because she and her either servant or priest, or however you want to see it. Anyway, there were two witches who were involved in one another. There is the evil Igor Zhavutich, who's kind of a murderous Rasputin figure, and the evil witch Asa, who comes from an aristocratic family. And they are described as both witches and vampires. And they were put to death. And we'll talk in a bit about the effects of how they were put to death, but it's really shocking and memorable. And then now it's 200 years later, around Victorian times, I suppose. And it is St. George's night, and what is going to happen is that the witch Asa is going to try to rise from her grave with the help of the risen Igor Yavutich, and they're going to try to. She's going to try. Basically, she's going to try to get herself a new body so that she can start her reign of terror once again, I suppose.
Which
And
conveniently she looks exactly like someone who's already.
yes, 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 yes. So that by
Right.
the time we
Well,
get to
it's
the end,
not convenient. It's that's part of her curse. Is that
that's her curse.
she's cursed all the female
Yes, yes, yes.
descendants with her beauty. before
Yeah.
she kills them.
And by the time we get to the end of this, there's going to be a plot point that is almost lifted from like an old Frankenstein movie, of with the transference of soul and mind. But which is really cool, and I want to make sure and talk about that. But that's the basic plot of Black Sunday, and that's taking out all of what makes this so hypnotic and memorable, because it is hypnotic. I wish that I could be seeing this on a big screen, because it is just so beautiful to look at every moment. But Drew, you had brought up the influence and the cult importance of Black Sunday. What were you thinking about when you said that?
Well, I wouldn't even say cult importance. I would just say
Mm,
importance. Like I think the reach that this has is far beyond just a cult film. But what's
mm,
so like interestingly, I think what this movie is kind of it's kind of in the same, like you look at a movie like Psycho, right? And you can
yeah.
see everything that came before it and then everything that's going to come after it. And I think this movie, for this particular facet of horror, which is, vampires, gothic horror, whatever you want to call it, I think this movie sits at a very interesting cross section of that, because you look at this movie and you can see Universal, you can see Hammer, you can see all of those things.
Well, and
But
Tim Burton
then
says it's his favorite movie, so it's
yeah,
complete
and
Mm,
check.
you can totally see Tim Burton in this. And I mean, he heavily in the movie we just discussed before our break, the Beetlejuice sequel, he
mm.
heavily references the look of this
Yes, he
movie
does.
in one sequence. And but like, okay, so like the Coppola Dracula movie that was such a big hit in the 90s,
Yep.
which is divisive among this podcast, but
Yeah.
like you can't deny how iconic and mainstream it is. And there's several shots in this movie that are recreations of shots in this movie.
Mm,
You look at someone like Tim Burton, who obviously visually took a lot from this movie, but even stuff like that isn't as overt, like the way Sam Raimi uses a camera. Like there's parts in this movie where a camera is supposed to represent a physical force, which is something Sam Raimi does a lot. That comes in this movie. So I think this movie is foundational in a lot
mm.
of ways for every horror movie that comes after it. But at the same time, you can definitely see the building blocks of everything that came before it. And I think that's really fascinating to me. From a academic standpoint, that's interesting to me, aside from just the general entertainment value that the
Mm.
movie itself has. It has all these other things that are going on there, that you can see the evolution of horror in this. And it came out not that far apart from Psycho. So I use that Psycho comparison, even though fundamentally Psycho is a different kind of movie. I do think, there's a conversation to be had about, the evolution of horror in these two movies, and where things were going.
That's so interesting that you would say that, because you think about this period. You mentioned Psycho. Also, I would note Peeping Tom came out in 1960, and that was a color film, but it also really sort of pushed the bounds of horror. And I don't mean in graphicness, but just sort of in how artistic these movies were. I also think it's fascinating that this being Bava's directorial debut, he has constructed. You said it almost exactly right. There's everything that you want to have in a Halloween movie here. It's like he decided, I'm going to do a horror movie and I'm going to hit it out of the park by piling on everything all in one film. There's if in Christmas movies, for instance, there are people whose job it is to look at every frame and go, do we have some Christmas in every frame? And in this, it's almost as though Bava did that with the spooky season and said, is there something in every frame that gives you an element of spookiness, so
It's
that you can
funny.
just, yeah.
It's funny you say that, because in one of my notes, I was taking notes, because It was a while back, and
Mhm.
I one of my notes, it just says whole lot of Satan,
Yes.
because there's so much in satanic trappings, and just the way the vampires are satanic and
Yeah.
demonic. But it's just funny, every scene there's just a whole lot of Satan
Yes.
in
I
there.
it's I love the concept of vampires here because, by the way, of course, it's 1960, so we've had years and years of Hollywood vampires. And, the Italian New Wave is heavily influenced by, or at least in conversation with, Hollywood. So it is with some deliberateness that they refer to these characters as vampires. And yet they are not like the vampires that we had known from Hollywood.
Well, in some ways, they're truer to
Mm,
actual folkloric vampires because they're something very they're much more ghoulish in
yes.
nature. Like their bodies are rotting,
Yeah.
and like it like honestly, even the way the Igor character is costumed, I was thinking about this on my because now I've watched this movie 3 times in
Hmm.
preparation for this
Yeah.
podcast. He's costumed much more like the historical Dracula
He
than
sure is.
any actual Dracula movie Dracula,
That
and
has to
that's a
be on purpose, right?
Well,
I
they
I mean,
did fit. They did fit them for Fangs, and then Mario Bava was like, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to do that."
but
But there's
the
like publicity film photos with
oh, that's
Fangs.
true. But his look, Javutich's look with that sort of Prince Valiant haircut and the mustache
big
and everything,
mustache.
he does look like the historic Dracula.
Well, and they
And
call it a griffin in the movie, but it's totally a dragon on his
on his
crest.
chest, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, it has to be on purpose. That he's calling to mind the historic Dracula. I just simply don't believe that he hadn't thought about that. And maybe not. Maybe it's a lucky coincidence, but it's
I would be stunned to find out that it was a coincidence. But
yeah.
the scenes of them also, like of him like crawling out of his grave and
Yes.
everything, like feels very zombie like.
Yes.
It seems almost like something that would have been in Night of the Living Dead, like a few years down the line. And
And there his fingers, Javutich's fingers, are glistening with blood when he rises. So there's mud and blood everywhere as he's rising up. And this is all in black and white. So you get to sort of imagine it has its own effect without you being distracted by the color of it. Um,
Well,
you
in
know,
some ways, with the deepness of tone in this movie, I feel like the blood is, when you see it, it's almost more disturbing than if it was in color, because I have a feeling if it was in color, it would just kind of look like the Kensington Gore,
yes.
hammer blood. But
Yeah.
the fact that it's in black and white, like it sort of just has this very visceral, like, quality
Yes.
to it.
No, you're absolutely right. Yes. So yes, very, very. You mentioned that Coppola had homaged a couple of shots in the 1992 Dracula. Can you remember what those shots were? And I actually
Well,
don't know.
all
So,
of the stuff of with the carriage
oh,
where Dracula comes to pick up Jonathan
Yeah.
Harker, played
yeah,
by Keanu Reeves in that movie,
yeah,
Oh gosh,
visually
the
is
the silent hooved horses. Oh, that's so cool.
it's
It's such
very
a
cool.
cool effect when they're just going by the carriage going by and you can't hear anything and it's kind of in slow motion. It's so bizarre.
It's strange, actually. That's something that I've seen in a couple of, because I believe Crypt of the Vampire also did that. And, so this is a Spanish and Italian horror movie trope that we didn't actually pick up a great deal, where demon carriages make no noise. It's weird, and it's always unnerving when you see it in a film because the characters will look towards a carriage that is just rolling silently towards them, and that it's it's
I
such a great idea.
I also like in that his resurrection scene, his where he comes out of the grave, this mask that they've nailed it to these people
Hmm.
to literally hammer in that they are of Satan.
Yes.
The satanic mask for briefly he's a whole different, he's a monster. He is this devil monster. And
Yes.
in some other horror movies, he would probably go the rest of that time looking like that. That would be the monster. But then
You
he
know,
removes
it
it,
might
and then
be
he's
cool
like
if he did.
decayed and
Mhm.
grotesque underneath as well.
Yeah.
Also, earlier they show her with she still has the nail marks from the mask
Yeah.
Yes.
on there.
Well, that's the
Oh, it's
poster.
just so grotesque and
That's the
like,
poster. If you look at
oh,
IMDb, that's what they show is her with the holes.
it's
Yes.
so great. And all of that reverse kind of, you were saying, like the kind of reverse shot where the eyes appear and everything. Just there's a lot of great effects in here.
Yeah,
And
Well,
all of
let's.
it.
his revealing his monstrous face underneath the monstrous mask.
And by the way,
Fantastic.
can we back up to when they discover when they're like discover her body or whatever, and the buffoons that discover
Couple of
the
doctors, I'll have you know,
buffoon doctors,
Doctor Buffoons.
Dr. Buffoon, Dr. Kevork, no, Dr. What was I calling him? Kumbaya, Dr. Kumbaya. I
Yes.
kept calling him. They like managed.
Crivillon is
Yeah, I
is
know,
his
but
name. Yes.
I like calling him Dr. Kumbaya.
Yeah.
They managed to break the glass over her because the coffin is set up like with a glass so that you could see the mask. I don't
Which is supposed
exactly
to be
know
a
why.
warning. Don't
Yeah,
mess with this
don't
person.
mess with it, right?
They
So
bear the mask of
manages
Satan.
because of the giant bat that
Oh,
he
I love
manages
that. I
to
I love that
giant
bat
bat.
fight.
He's like fighting this giant bat. Because of the giant bat, he manages to knock over and destroy the cross statue sculpture
Yeah.
that's there, break the glass, and then it's like, okay, well, since I did that, I may as well go ahead and rob this grave and take this like triptych thing and this mask off because I'm sure nothing bad will happen.
Right. Well, they straight up they make it. I have some notes for that too. They fight a bat, and that is amazing.
Yeah, he
Like
fights the bat.
that
That's
bat
amazing.
fight is awesome. Like
But
It
then
I
is.
was
as
It
it
just
is
like,
wasn't
oh
awesome.
bad
man,
enough it wasn't bad enough that he did all of that, he also manages to bleed on her so that she can go
yeah.
ahead and get some
But
lifeblood.
but they make it out. They're like, oh no, we're examining this house. Like, you mean desecrating this house?
Yeah,
Yes.
Like, yeah.
desecrating the crap out of it. Then he's in the carriage later and he's like, "Oh, whoops, I took the triptych. Oh, well."
Oh well,
What
right.
are you gonna do?
I just stole this relic
It's fine.
from hundreds of years ago.
I'm sure nobody
Oh
cares.
well, that's
And
around that.
and
Well, actually, I don't want to skip ahead to the appearance of Barbara Steele, but I do want to get to that. But
by the
but
way, we just sorry, Jason.
no, please go ahead, Tony.
We just talked about it, but also in my notes was most dramatic coaches, which tracks just exactly with what we're talking about. I mean, there's all of the coach stuff
Yes.
is just it's glorious. I love
Well,
it.
and they've made a big deal in the books that I've read about and I think it was misleading. They're all like, oh, Bava did a lot with a little, and he didn't have much of a stage, and it's true, but so I guess maybe this proves the point, but you never for a moment feel like you're looking at an impoverished production. You
No,
you
definitely not.
completely believe it, and also so he so expertly mixes soundstage with practical, and there's lots of practicality in this. There are lots of times when people are on the castle walls and looking out at the garden and stuff, and you're looking at a practical garden. And then there are other times when everything you're looking at is completely false and it's just gorgeous.
Well,
Yeah.
even when he films, I was noticing even when he films like the driver of the coach,
Hmm.
and it's in a soundstage kind of probably environment where they're just shaking the coach.
Yes.
Behind him is just this extremely evocative smoke, and the
Yes.
way it flows and builds sells it
And the
regardless.
shadows that
And
go by. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like at no point, even if your brain knows that I mean, he's not driving that coach around.
Yes.
There's so much set up to make it look cool and have a presence.
Absolutely.
Cool isn't even the word,
And
but
I
there's
honestly,
a
Tony,
presence there that just like plenty of people have done less with more.
yes, absolutely. Because I'm telling you that even though everybody says, there's there's it's an illusion you're seeing, fine, but it's an illusion that's complete for me. I'm like, yeah, they're driving a coach down a spooky road. I mean, it's not. I don't have to do any work to believe
Sure.
that, and it's just beautiful. I thought, this castle ruin that they're in. What an amazing set! I mean, all of it is good, just gorgeous. When Doctor Crouvion decides, oh, interesting, that's a big weird mask on that person, on that dead body's face. I'm gonna remove the mask from this corpse just to check it out, I guess. He does that, and they lift it up, and that's the first time you see the sort of mummified face of Barbara Steele. We should go back because we haven't slowed down to explain for the listener that in the opening, when Barbara Steele is put to death, in a very, very, very memorably shot scene where sometimes the camera moves inside the approaching mask, uh, they take a big spiked, well, to use the word again, a big mask of metal that bears the face of a devil. They place it, and it has spikes in it on the inside. They place it over her head, and then they hammer it with a big old hammer, and blah. I mean, that is the grodiest concept, and you don't actually, obviously, you don't see anything except for blood flying everywhere. But boy, oh boy, is that.
Which is plenty.
Yeah, that's plenty. And that's shocking. There is nothing like this. Is 1960. In 1960, there is nothing like this in a Hammer movie.
Well, the Pit and
Uh,
the Pendulum that we just watched recently also has that
yes.
spiky
Isn't that
thing.
interesting? Yeah. And what year was Pit and the Pendulum again? That was like I'm gonna see. I think that was like 64. 1961. Oh, so it was the next year. I could not begin to tell you whether that Pit and the Pendulum
It just
had been
must have been
influenced by this.
well, they must have just it must have been a thing that people were like discovering that these dungeons had these horrible torture devices, and they were like, let's use that.
I think it's possible, actually, come to think of it, uh, since Sam Arkoff had produced the American import of this movie, and he was, of course, a producer on Pit and the Pendulum, it's very possible that he pointed Corman towards the Bava stuff. I mean, it's also possible that Corman, who directed that movie, had already seen the Bava material. Either way, I think it's an influence that you can't get away from. It has to be real.
Yeah. So, by the way, Joey, when we were talking about the torture devices, I started following an account that was a fake history hunter
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
found out that a lot of the torture devices, Iron Maidens and other things, were vastly either made up or expounded upon just due to ghoulish, like, we think this is happening. And so it was more popular
So like
as a
urban legends?
well, more like look at these horrible things we have in this museum, and they weren't either some of them were just flat out that wasn't really used, or uh were used weren't in every dungeon across across the
Yeah.
realm. And so, but a lot of it was, hey, come to this museum and see these torture devices, look how
Right.
horrible everybody was, they were dangerous, and who knows how many people they were used on. And the answer was not as many as you would think, but
Well,
that doesn't sell
I hope
tickets.
that's the case.
Yeah, but that doesn't sell tickets. So
Yeah.
and so a lot of you'll see a lot of the horror tropes, and certainly then later on in metal, using these is like, look how shocking, just because that was the idea that this was happening so much. Not that there weren't a lot of terrible torture devices, but just kind of some of our mainstays that we think of as the big ones weren't as widespread or whatever. And I thought that was kind of fascinating, the stuff I was reading about over this past year. So, but you're talking about it in like, but definitely they make amazing horror movie pieces.
Yep.
That's true, no matter
Yeah,
what.
yeah. Uh, so I want to take a moment to shift over and talk about Barbara Steele here. Barbara Steele plays two roles, and I don't know. I think she was fairly new at the time. She is a wonderful discovery. And when you first see Barbara Steele as a living person here, well, yeah, okay. We'll skip over her as a witch because you open in the prologue with her as the evil witch, and that's very memorable. And we'll get back to her in a second. But when you first see her as the innocent Katya, it is amazing the way that Bava frames her. It's gorgeous. The two doctors are coming out of the crypt that they've been investigating, because basically the carriage broke a wheel, and so the driver's working on it, and they're like, oh, well, while you're working on the wheel, we'll go wander around this ruined castle, and because they're on the way to a medical conference, and it's taking a time. So they walk around in the crypt and they desecrate it, and they set in motion the return of the witch, and then they come back out and they meet Barbara Steele, and the camera sort of zooms towards her, and she's up on a hill looking down at them, close by, but she's raised, standing under under these walls. She's got a dog with her, if I'm recalling correctly, and she's wearing this outfit, and her hair sort of flowing down, and she looks for all the world like something out of a gothic novel, like something you would see on the cover of a book. It's even like a Jane Austen kind of thing. Uh, it she's really it's she's wonderful, and then the way that Bava is framing her and presenting her is really wonderful. I don't think we think about Barbara Steele this way very much, because we tend to think of her as being scary and harsh and the giant eyes and everything, but Bava's camera really loves her when it shows her at first. I was just struck by that. But Steele as Joya, you were pointing out, I think or anybody who wants to jump in here, Steele as the demon is a totally different thing. It's neat to see her in this dual role.
Well, she's not super different, because she's still, her, Barbara Steele. So, it's interesting that, yeah, that the
Well,
demon.
I think he means her personality is different.
Yeah, but
Well,
I mean, she's not that different to me. I didn't feel like. However, yeah, she's her look
Really?
doesn't actually.
I can phrase it differently. If there's a question like, do you feel like Steele adequately portrays two characters? But I think she does. I really enjoy how different these characters are.
Oh, great.
But no, continue.
No, anyway, I was just gonna say that, yeah, it's interesting when you watch her go from being the cavernous kind of skull almost, and then it fills in like we were talking about, and
Yeah.
then the wounds heal, and now she's just skulking about in this, in her vampire kind of look outfit or whatever. And the girl that's actually alive is wholesome, and she has the crucifix, and she's just, but I mean that's about it. To me, because they really didn't change how she looks. Like I'm thinking about, we love that movie and that in the show La Usurpadora. It's like that's
Yes.
Spanish. And the girl that plays the two characters is,
Yes.
I keep forgetting it's the same actor. Like it's remarkable how different the two characters are that she plays. I didn't feel that here with Barbara Steele. I just feel like she looks, because I
That's
think it's
fair.
because I think it's the fault of the fact that the movie looks the way it does, which is the super high contrast, and she's very pale and she has very dark hair. So it's gonna be like she just can't not not look like herself.
Well, also, we don't
But yeah,
actually get many scenes with Asa, to be honest with
right,
you.
Well,
exactly.
I would say though also that's partly by design because again, she's supposed to look like the
Right,
her ancestor. It's
exactly. Yeah.
part of the curse. And that's one of the reasons she wants to jump into this girl's body is that, well, I've magically created this visual doppelganger of myself. And but as far as like the personalities of the two characters, I don't think they're that much alike at all. Like you have this one sort of ingenue type character, and then you have the vampiress who is very hateful. So I mean, I guess one could argue that the characterization doesn't go much beyond that, which I think is fair. But I don't think the two characters are actually that much alike. Like I'll side team Jason for this one.
By the way, I love sort of the whole world that they establish here. It's a very traditional Gothic world that once the film spends some time in the family that is cursed, it's suddenly we're in a fairly cozy. Like terrible things are going to happen very soon to make it uncozy, but you have this brother and sister, including the lovely Katya and the brother and their aristocratic dad, who is getting on in years, and the castle is cold, and he's brooding about the curse on the family. But all of this is just so wonderful. And again, I keep thinking of Mario Bava, thinking about the tropes that he's going to play with. The travelers and the carriage and the castle and all of this stuff. And he doesn't even have the Roger Corman Poe pictures to mess with. He's just strictly drawing from novels and spooky older movies and what have you. It's I love this world. So the two storylines meet where the two doctors come to the spooky town after they meet beautiful Katya. They come to this town where they're staying overnight, and they basically, what happens is they're never going to make it to their conference, because in the night, because Asa is being risen, she's going to start preying on the family, and that's going to draw out the doctor, and it'll start sort of the dominoes of this plot. There's a wonderful moment in the inn, and the funny thing is, not much, Julia, both you and I thought that the little girl who was being sent out to milk the cow was a goner. And
She's actually the daughter of the actor who is playing the other vampire. Let me see, what's the name?
no, really?
Arturo Dominici. It's her daughter. It's
Yes.
his daughter. Yep.
Oh, that's lovely. That's really cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't believe. I was like, that woman's gonna feel really bad once her kid gets
Yeah.
beaten up.
Yeah. Um, once again, we have the inn near the castle. This is a trope that we see in every Hammer film, but this is 1960, so there's only been like what, one Hammer Dracula film at this point. So Bava, if he's drawing from anything, is mostly drawing from Universal and what have you. Yeah. Is there anything else in this period that you guys want to point us towards? There's one thing that I wanted to bring up, which is, Drew, you had mentioned this earlier, which is the regeneration of Asa. So Asa is the evil witch, and she's coming back. And I have looked at this effect many times. So basically, first she comes back, but she's weakened. And then her next plan is going to be, she's going to have to get stronger. But coming back, when they first reveal her face, it is basically mummified.
Yeah.
It's turned brittle, and then it slowly softens up because the doctor manages to bleed on her at the same time that he's like removing her Satan mask and taking away the holy relics that are that are keeping her in place.
Shaking my head again.
Yeah. But they do this effect. Do you want to talk about the effect of the eyes?
Well, it's like the eyes start to fill back in.
We were
And
guessing it might be like hard-boiled eggs or something. I don't know.
yeah,
It's really...
or Tony mentioned maybe, it's something as simple as, they filmed something and then reversed it on film. I mean, I don't know, but I just think it looks great, is that you start to see this. And I don't think, like nowadays, I guess they probably would do it with CG, but I don't know if you could get it to look quite as good as this, because
It's
Yeah,
also
poached eggs is what it was. Apparently.
now that I think about it, it also reminds me of the death of Clytus in the Flash Gordon movie, where his eyes bulge out, and similar,
Huh.
and some of the mask is similar in some ways.
I haven't thought
too.
about that in a long time.
I do love when they remove the mask and there's these tiny scorpions and stuff coming out of the sockets. of
Yes.
And
this,
her
like,
whole face,
mask.
really.
Oh, it's so effective.
Yeah.
And then later on we get the whole thing where she comes out. We have a coffin that explodes, and then her face is there with the nail marks. They keep those nail marks on, which really adds to like the demonic nature of her vampirism. Most of the time we see vampires and they heal up and they're these I guess more angelic or more perfect creatures. But the fact that in this time she these characters at first, until they get enough blood, they have the remnants of their torture.
Yes.
It's monstrous. I also, by the way, I think it's funny that you mentioned this family is really cozy, but when we cut to their actual house it's this castle with this fireplace with this amazing
Secret room
inlay,
behind it. Oh, it's so
that
cool.
inlay with the, behind it and everything. Like,
Yes.
cozy isn't what I would have thought of.
No,
Well,
I want a house that has a room behind the fireplace.
Oh yeah.
yes. Well, yeah, that's a really, really good point. But when I was a kid, I totally fantasized about getting to live in a cozy place that looks like a Dracula castle. I mean,
I
so
just find that
I don't think
cozy is
I don't think
the
that
word
word
you're
means what you
using.
think it means. Yeah.
That's what's funny to me.
It's a really neat, sometimes impractical house that they're living in. Princess Katia, she has a house. She has her room, and her room is separated, with a big curtain. And there's a point, a big curtain that basically separates a giant room into just a merely big room. And I guess she uses the other side as a closet, or who knows. But
Interesting.
there's a point in this thing where she sees somebody poking in from the curtain, and she calls to the people in the house and says, "There is somebody looking through my curtain." And so they go and they open it. The men open up the curtain and go, "No, no one back there." And
I'm
then
just
that's
imagining
it.
things. It made me so mad. I got so mad about that. There's certain things that just made me really angry, and that was one of them.
I
I was
love
like,
that.
"Oh, for fuck's sake, seriously?"
There are a number of moments as Joya pointed out, I think, especially when they're dealing in the castle. Prince Yavutich, he's not a prince, but Yavutich tends to just sort of abstract himself out of the darkness, just like Michael Myers. And it's an effect. I don't know how you do. I'm totally ignorant of this. Don't know how you do this effect. But Bava is a genius of lighting. I showed a picture of just one of his cool lighting bits on Facebook. But he does a lighting thing somehow with Yavutich, where Yavutich just appears out of the darkness, and it's like our eyes adjusting and seeing something that wasn't there. And it's not just from the actor stepping forward; it has to do with shifting the light in an imperceptible way, that suddenly something that you didn't see is now visible. And it is
Yeah, I
something
don't
that
know if it's just as simple as just a spotlight or what, but it's
no,
really
no, it's more, it's somehow turning up the light in a way that the light reflects off of portions of the image, so that you can see it. And it's amazing, just like in the scene, the bit that I showed on Facebook. So he does this effect where you can see a glint of light in Barbara Shelley's eye and her whole face, but
Barbara Steele, you
it's
mean?
what did I say? Barbara Shell. I'm so sorry.
Shelley.
Barbara Steele. And it's all from just light placement, where he's got the light like way up above her head, and it causes that interesting effect. So yeah, I don't know. There's nothing I can say that other than John Carpenter was borrowing from the best
Mhm.
when he did this. Uh, so yes, that's one of my favorite effects. The eyes with the as we said, poached eggs. That was amazing. Tony, another great effect that you mentioned was the bat, which we don't get a close look at, and that's probably good. But
It's
that
probably for the
bat,
best. Yeah.
the bat is the size of a dog. I mean, it's an enormous bat. It's this huge thing, and you don't really make it out, which is great. It's because it's a completely unnatural thing. It's wonderful. Uh, I want to get to the soul transference at the end, but before we get there, what in this middle bit would you like to hit on before we leave it behind? And if there's nothing that pops up, what I thought was really interesting is, oh well, of course, the dominoes that are falling, as I mentioned,
I
is
really like
yeah,
the vampirized version of Doctor
Crouvion. I'm pretty
Crouvion,
sure.
like where it's subtle, but they've made him look older, like his hair is streaked gray, and they've
Yeah, he just
made
looks
the
more
like
like Einstein.
Yeah.
yeah, like they it's not a monstrous makeup, but they do enough to where there's something wrong with him.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I love the way the actor plays it, because he seems troubled the whole time. Like it's like he can't help himself but do this evil bidding, but it
Yeah.
seems like he's conflicted the whole time. And there's just something kind of cool about that.
Doesn't he say something like, he warns somebody, run, run and save yourself. He has this ability to. This is essentially a family curse. I think he urges the young doctor to get out, which is very cool. Yeah.
I also really like all the all the stuff they have with the village and castle. I mean, there is some great sets and scenery in that. It's also interesting too that the person who becomes kind of our Van Helsing is a priest,
Yes.
and that all of the crosses that most of the crosses that we see, other than perhaps the one on her pendant, are more Orthodox crosses. They're closer to Orthodox
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
crosses.
Yes.
So the one she's holding in her house, and then the ones we see throughout, and are we're in a kind of an Orthodox area, which that's you don't see that a lot. So I thought that was fascinating to
Right.
see
And so it's
kind of how they
exotic
changed it.
to, yeah, I mean, it's exotic to us, but it's exotic to them as well because, they're Romanians, right? This is the realm of Dracula that they're
Right.
in. And so because that doesn't look like an Italian priest either.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. Yeah, and that is funny. I'm glad you brought that up because that is funny for me to think about, to remember that Bava's trying to present something that is going to be slightly alien to his audience, as much as to the American audience. Yeah, yeah. I also, by the way, really like, again, with the cozy business, I like the sort of I've heard Bava referred to as new wave in as much as the new wave sort of brought attention to itself, that you're always aware that you're watching a kind of film. Like when you're watching something, you're like, I see that I'm watching a crime film, like at the same time as you get into the story. And I do feel that the most in these scenes, like with the romance, where all the romance music plays, and the young lovers are close together. It's wonderful, but it also is it's perfect in how much it recreates what we think of when we think of young lovers in a romance story. So what I wanted to get to at the end, and then we'll go back and pick up anything that we forgot to mention, because besides a lot of running around in secret passages and everything, when we get to the end, it's something straight out of a 1940s Frankenstein picture, which is that the evil princess Asa intends to take over the body of the good Princess Katya, who are both played by Barbara Steele. And so once Barbara Steele finds herself within touching distance of the evil princess, the princess has enough strength, having risen slightly, to touch hands with Katya and start to transfer Katya's essence, her vital life
And
essence.
another really great effect when
Yes,
she's kind of being like, dried.
yes, yeah.
Dried out.
She
It's
starts
really
to
interesting.
she starts to dry up and get drawn and
Shrivel
and
shrivel
thin.
up a little bit.
And
Yeah.
and so which reminds me of brain transference suspense from a Frankenstein movie, although as I say it right now, I can't even remember what Frankenstein movie I'm talking about. I might be talking about Young Frankenstein. I actually don't know where there was anything like this, but I know that I've seen this kind of thing before. Drew, you're a Universal guy. Is there anything with the heroes running to stop
Well,
the transference of brains?
I mean, there that is in Young Frankenstein, and there's also a soul transference in this is a Hammer movie, but Frankenstein created woman.
Hmm.
So I mean, you're certainly not wrong that there's something Frankensteinian about it.
How
But
strange,
I
though. Well, I guess I'm just ignorant because I really thought that there was a moment where, oh wait, Abbott and
Are you
Costello meet
thinking
Frankenstein. Aren't they
there
trying to
is
put?
Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein? There is also, I mean, there's nothing exactly like this. I think what you're hitting on is that there's lots of movies with something similar
Yes.
to
Oh, for
this,
sure.
which is what I think, Bava and company were really kind of going for,
Absolutely.
is that classicism.
Yeah. Because by the time the young hero shows up, uh, the transfer is complete. And so now, in the body of Katya, evil Asa is. No, wait, no, 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 no. She didn't switch bodies. She's just youthified. So now, evil Asa is standing up, and she says, "Oh, go drive us." drive us, and they don't
Which
do the heart, they do the eye. Go drive us a stake through the eye of
which this guy was awfully quick to be ready to do that. I was like,
yeah,
"Really?" He's like, "Oh, okay. Oh, wait a
but he
minute."
does stop pretty quickly. I was
Only
impressed.
because of the cross, he
Well,
stopped.
yeah, that's
He
what
sees
gets
the
it.
cross and he's like, "Wait, why does she have your cross?" But I mean, gosh, he was just ready to kill this person who looks exactly like the supposedly love of his life, like immediately.
Yes, it was, but it's so cool with the cross, and he, he tests it on her skin because this is a film that establishes that that unholy matter hisses and steams
Yeah,
when you touch
you'll.
it
I
with a
mean,
cross.
and we'll see that again. Salem's Lot
Oh
has that
yeah,
as a test, right?
yes,
Um,
so cool.
oh wait, you're not a vampire yet. The
Yes,
cross, you're good with the cross.
didn't
And
they have
there's
tongue
also
depressors
when
at
we
one point
see
in the movie?
how.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. What?
A stupid point. I was just trying to remember, didn't they use tongue depressors at one point in that movie in Salem's Lot or that miniseries where
Yeah, I think so. And they use it in the new one too.
anyway,
But
yeah, continue.
and I also like that when we discover how she's who she really is. There's that great shot of like the rib cage, and it's all
Oh my goodness, yes. Which he
fantastic.
borrows almost shot for shot later himself in Planet of the Vampires.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
yeah.
so good. Like just there's so much good stuff in that, and I love the older vampire. He's got this shot that's really close up with all the makeup on, where he's over something, and we have him there. It's just
Yes.
it's grotesque and amazing. Just I mean, if you're gonna rip something off, this is the movie to do it. That influence part. Like you can't help but go, wow, that looks great. There's so many shots you could just take, and all the stark contrast, black and white,
Oh
just
gosh, yes.
sells it.
It going back for a second, I really you're exactly right. When Bava makes this movie, it's just so fascinating to me that it's every frame looks like a horror movie, which isn't true for most horror movies,
Right.
But like there's not a frame of this thing that you couldn't put on a postcard and go, well, yeah, that's that's Black Sunday right there. It and it all of the choices are leading to that. Part of it is his making it into a period piece, so that it more easily lends itself to a kind of a spookiness that just comes from history.
And
Because if
even
you were,
shots
yeah,
like there's shots of her, she runs down this hallway, and
mm,
we get this great shot, and when she finds the guy, who's hung himself or been
yes,
hung in front of the door. But just that shot even is one of those like women running from houses as your blog posts, like that just the way the depth in there and contrast becomes, we see that often repeated just because it's such a great shot.
yeah, yeah. So that actually brings us to the end, and it actually has a happy ending where the well, wait a minute. I'm trying. Yeah, Katya awakens. I was just checking the notes because for the longest time they're afraid that Katya won't, but she comes back, and so they have a true hero's happy ending in this film,
And complete with villagers getting their revenge yet again.
yes.
A mob with torches, pitchforks, etc.
Yeah. Yes, and setting fire and everything. Yeah. Gosh.
What happens to the prince, to the guy, to the other vampire?
Oh, well, they find him in his grave, and the doctor and the priest put a spike through his eye.
Okay.
Isn't that right? That's the way
Yeah, but there's also a fight in a pit, and there's all manner of
Oh yeah, so it was Kruvion's body they put the spike through. So Yavutich, how do they kill Yavutich? I can't. I'm so embarrassed. I don't remember how they how
It's
they
not very
they.
memorable because I don't remember either.
Isn't that funny? That by that point in the movie, you've totally lost track of where some of the bad guys are.
Mhm.
That's my failing, and not the movies because I don't remember how Yavutich is taken care of because
Eats
he's
his
fighting
heart.
with the one of the helper guys. So yes. Well, anyway, We should get our final thoughts, but also throw in anything that we can think of that we should have mentioned. So yeah, and what order did we start in? It was Julia. So Julia, I know we've been kind of moving through this pretty quickly, but what would you like to leave people with about Black Sunday?
Well, it's interesting given that this is Mario Bava's directorial debut.
Yeah.
To note that he really hated working with Barbara Steele. She was kind of a pain in the ass. Like
Oh,
she
really?
didn't want to do, yeah, she would just not show up. She's like, I don't like my wig. I don't like that my cleavage is going to be shown. I don't know. I think he's going to want me to be nude. I don't want to. I don't want to show up. So I don't know. She admits that she was kind of a pain. So I think it's interesting that this is like his first time. And then she had been doing these movies because she had started when there was an actors strike in the U.S., so she couldn't work in the U.S., and so
Mm,
she was working in Italy in these horror movies, and she never liked it. Like she just was always like, "I'm not. This is not my thing." So
mm.
it's interesting to think. You see her looking the way she does and being the way she is, and you think, "Wow, she's just like kind of perfect for this." But no, it was not. She did not feel that way.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was an interesting note as you are taking this in. But yeah, I think just a very iconic film in terms of everything about the look and the effects and a lot of the choices that the Baba makes. And I can't believe we hadn't done a Mario Baba. I was like, surely that's wrong.
No, it
It's
is right.
fascinating.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Thank you very much. And all I can say is she was probably having a terrible time. I like that she would tell that story herself and
Yeah.
go. That's really cool. Drew, what about you?
I'm just glad that we finally talked about a Mario Bava movie,
Yeah.
and I think this is a good classical start to spooky season with some black and white gothic horror, which is, I think, even it feels just very seasonal. So
Yeah.
I think that's something we all enjoy about it. So yeah. Um, I'm glad that we talked about it. I think it's a great movie. I don't really have much else to add.
No, that's great. That's great. Tony, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's just looking over it, again, while rewatching it was just a delight. By the way, Javutic gets that he was part of the pit fight that I was talking about. That's
Ah,
part of
yes.
his demise, which is
Ah,
a
yes.
great sequence. All of that part is fantastic. Although beware again, once you have a castle with secret passages behind chimneys, also be aware there could be death pits wherever they decide to put death pits. So
True.
you get one, you got to
Yeah.
buy the
Part of
ticket, take the ride.
Jason's cozy home
Yeah.
includes death
Oh,
pits.
look
Yeah,
at the cozy death pit.
that's
Look
an
at that.
excellent point.
Oh, I love our little death pit. What a family gathering place that is.
That's an excellent point. I'm
Our
just
first death pit. Oh, what a starter. It's our
Is there a
starter
Christmas
home.
ornament? There's a
Oh my
Christmas ornament.
Yeah.
God. If you could create an Arthur, like a little, the Fisher Price little people, the
Right.
little, bumpy little people with their little houses
For
and
Wednesday Adams.
yes,
Yeah.
but if it were like, little people death pit, that'd be awesome.
Look, oh, is that our son and daughter building their first death pit? Look at that.
That's
We've
just so
we've
Adams
raised them
Family.
right.
That is so Adams Family.
It is.
Hilarious.
But yeah, I mean, there's just again, and as we grew up, like that's another great thing is you can see really nice versions of this if you look. Whereas you kind of got whatever you got when we were growing up, and maybe the prints weren't great. So
Yeah.
now that we can see this just beautifully shot black and white, there's so much there that's worth, even if you went through this with us and you maybe haven't seen it in a while, maybe you've never seen it, like
Yeah.
you owe it to yourself to watch a good print of this film because it's got so much going for it. I'm really glad we're kicking this off. There's a lot of great movies out right now for spooky season.
Yeah.
So, but I hope that people are, if you haven't watched this in a while or have you never seen it, add it to your list because it's definitely worth it.
Beautiful. All I'll say is it is so great in this, you know, it's the 7th, so we're still early in October and talking about Black Sunday, this thing with vampires and monsters and cozy creepy castles and peasants with torches, everything.
Whole lot of
I
Satan.
yes. The Mask of I love this. Also, there's a really wonderful essay about this movie in Danny Peary's Cult Films. I think it was Cult Films 1, Cult Movies, sorry. And I think that was the first time I had ever heard of this movie. So I got cult movies when I was in, I don't know, when I was in grade school. And so that was how I learned about a whole bunch of movies. That book came out in 1981, and there was no chance that I was going to actually get to see this film. And I didn't get to see it again until like the late 90s when I moved to Austin. So back then, that was how we learned about movies, is just, had magazines and books, and they'd have a picture and they would explain it to you. And you go, gosh, maybe someday I will get to see Black Sunday. So, all right, awesome. I'm so happy that we talked about this film. All right, everybody, now we should do some endorsements. Like, what have you been watching or listening to or anything else that, barring anything else that you could just think of that you think somebody else should be watching to properly ring in the season? What do you got going on? Let's start with Julia. Julia, what have you?
Well, both of mine are things that everyone knows about, but for some reason a lot of people don't like, and I don't know why, because they're wrong. One is Agatha All Along, which I love, and I think anybody who doesn't like it just honestly doesn't like Marvel things to have women in them. That's what I think personally, because I think it's such a good show. It's really fun, really spooky, great characters, great performances, and it's done with practical effects, which I just love. So very, very, very fun show. And then I really enjoyed the Joker 2, Folia de. I
Mhm.
thought it was good. I thought it was enjoyable. I really enjoyed the songs, but gosh, people are being mean to it. I just don't get it. So those are mine that
It's so interesting,
saying
isn't it,
right now.
when you're like, well, excuse the fuck out of me, having a good time. Like, I come in a movie, I had a good time, and everybody's like, well, you shouldn't have. And yeah, that happens
Didn't
to me
you
all the time.
notice that they did the same song several different ways? Yes, I did. I didn't mind. I thought it was good. So shut up. I was about to say the name of a person that I really like and respect who didn't like this movie, but I'm like, yeah, I won't call him out for that.
I mean, I haven't seen that movie, but I think that I mean that's what movies do. There's a theme. I
Yeah,
mean, there's like we're watching The Fall Guy. There's like 5 versions of I Was Made for Loving You, and that's
that's right.
part of
Yeah.
that was a conscious choice. Like, yes. Or have you ever heard of a reprise on a song? Like, that's what
Yes,
that is.
Yep.
I don't really have much interest in seeing the movie, but if somebody enjoys it, like, I don't,
right.
whatever,
The
and that's
moment
a
I heard
weird.
that they were making it a musical, though, I knew that it was going to be incredibly
Divisive.
divisive,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's okay,
Sure.
but I say
I
this as
love
somebody.
everything that goes out on a limb. I mean, like, yeah, go ahead. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I will say I still have not seen the first one, and I probably never will. But I'm far more interested in the sequel based
Yeah,
off the fact that it seems like it took some big swings, and
right.
because there's something about a big budget train wreck that I really enjoy as a
Hell yeah.
moviegoer. So but I probably will still wait till it's on Max or something, though. I don't think
Sure.
I'm going to go pay full. Also, I have a baby now, so I have
Yeah.
Right.
to be
Yeah.
considering which movies are really, really worth finding a sitter for.
The great thing about babies, honestly, it gets you out of everything. Like, that's why one should have a baby, is you
That's
don't
not
have to
why.
go to.
Don't listen to him. That's not why.
I thought it was because of the addictive head smell, but
Yes, that's
That's
all of the other
that's
things are
a
also
better
true.
reason.
yeah. Also, baby cuddles. Baby cuddles are pretty
Yes,
good.
baby cuddles, all of
Baby
that.
laughs are good.
Mm.
But if I want to use my infant daughter now as a way to get out of social obligations, then
You can.
I'll be sure to pull the trigger on that and be like,
Yeah,
oh, can't get a sitter. Sorry,
I know,
you
right?
know. Yeah.
So great.
Um,
Yes. I'm sorry. Tony, what about you?
Well, I hope we
Oh,
cover. I
wait,
would
did we
love.
skip
Wait,
over Drew? I'm
I
so
think
Oh,
sorry.
Drew is after me. Yeah.
Drew was
yeah.
talking
I'm
about
sorry.
Joker, but I didn't actually I'm sorry, Tony.
No, it's fine.
Drew, Monsieur, what have you been watching?
well, I also really like Agatha all along,
Mhm.
and would like to second that endorsement. I also, it's going to be my new thing where I go, hey, you want to know how popular superheroes were in the early 21st century? Well, they made a TV miniseries about the Fantastic Four's nanny. They were pretty popular. They were pretty popular. They were pretty
Yeah.
popular. But I think it's a lot of fun. It's got some great visuals, and I like the musical numbers. I know that is, speaking of musical numbers being a divisive thing. I know that's something that has turned some people off of Agatha all along, but I find, maybe it's because I live with a musician, but I find the use of music in the show to be fairly
Yeah.
effective. But I also, since my aforementioned daughter was born, I
Mhm.
have been not necessarily the most spooky season type genre films, but nostalgic nonetheless. I have been watching a lot of Ray Harryhausen movies.
Oh,
Like
cool.
on my birthday, I watched Jason and the Argonauts and Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, and I've continued watching like all the old Sinbad movies, and I might break into some of his science fiction movies, like It Came from Beneath the Sea or Earth versus the Flying Saucers, or just something. But I've just been on a Ray Harryhausen kick, and
Oh, that's wonderful.
I enjoy watching them with my baby daughter just kind of curled up on my chest. There's just something really sweet about it.
Very
That's
sweet.
wonderful. Thank you for all of that. Tony, what have you been watching?
Well, I hope that our listeners checked out what I saw at Fantastic Fest, because there's 30 plus movies, so 33 movies or something like that. I didn't go over every single one of those, but a lot of what I watched was there, of course, right? Since we were off air for a bit. I hope that we can cover. I would love to cover two things that came out on streaming: Apartment 7A, the Rosemary's Baby prequel, as well as the New Salem's Lot, which I thought was solid. Actually, that
Mm.
to me could have been a miniseries. I would have been happy as well. And supposedly there was originally a 3-hour cut, so maybe one day we'll get that. But both of those are solid. Both of those I would also love to talk about, because especially since I got to see Apartment 7A in a theater originally, which was really cool. Frankie Frico is showing at a few places, which I covered it again. Like, if you wanted a slight satire, but mostly homage to movies like Ghoulies, Munchies, that whole post Gremlins, we're
Uh-huh.
gonna make Gremlins, but we're gonna make it weirder kind of thing. Frankie Frico is showing. I know that it was showing at some draft houses. Hopefully, that's definitely not something for everyone, because you kind of have to like those movies and then want to see a new send up of those. But boy, do the puppets and the style are fantastic.
Mm.
And I was also really pleasantly surprised at the new Transformers animated movie, 3D, CG
Oh,
movie.
really?
I was skeptical, but I heard it was good from friends of mine. And, again, I'm always hoping for a good movie.
Hmm.
And I was like, I need to see a, Optimus Prime Megatron as as a middle-aged man. Do I need to see a origin story of these characters? And you know what, it really worked and was interesting, and I enjoyed it. I saw it in an early one, and it was really cool to see, like, there was like a dad probably my age who was explaining some things to his teenage sons, and there were kids there, and there were old, it was a good mixture of an audience.
Mm.
And everybody seemed to have a good time, and I was really pleasantly surprised about that. Kind of not in the genre area. I've also been, Rain and I really enjoyed Bad Monkey. I think it's on Apple, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
That was that was a really good kind of crime mystery thing, and we really liked that a lot. Actually, I was surprised. Like we're gonna watch an episode. Hey, maybe this thing is good, and I can definitely recommend it if that's your bag. So again, most of my recommendations, if you go back and listen to the wrap up episode or the coverage from Fantastic Fest, I don't want to rehash that. You can listen to those, but there's the world of genre cinema, especially all over the world, is alive and well, and that makes me feel great. And there's things that there's still a few movies I missed that I still need to catch up on. Also, this will go out to the Monster Movie Happy Hour peeps, but the Life and Deaths of Christopher Lee documentary, where he's played by a puppet, and there's animation and there's really good interviews. I thought that was of interest to to our common listeners. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Nice. Let's see. I have not been watching. I mean, I definitely enjoyed Joker, but I love big swings. My favorite Marvel joint so far has been She-Hulk, and I'm definitely alone in that. So, and
I loved it actually. So
I'm so glad to hear that. Everything that I a lot of times, I don't know. I enjoy these things that are slightly irreverent looks at stuff. But I also recognize that I'm a hypocrite, because there's plenty of times where I completely reject something. As Drew mentioned, I was so mean to the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, but now I realize that my being mean to it was a kind of just fussiness, that I wanted a very traditional Dracula. So that was on me. It wasn't on Coppola. I also should report, for those of you keeping track at home, that I am a mere 61 episodes away from finishing Peyton Place. I have been making real progress, and
amazing.
yeah, well, I mean, I've been since I've been lawyering lately, all I do is look at documents all day, and so on a screen, I'm just playing through Peyton Place, so I'm rocketing through it, and
But you'll be sad to learn that he doesn't feel like the last season is as good as the rest.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible, because everybody who's been on the show since the beginning of the show, as of the 400s, suddenly everybody's like moving away. So basically, all that's left are a few minor characters and a few new characters who are basically on a death ship. I mean, they've been brought in, and they're, they have some storylines, but the show is going to end, and there's a general a general feel that this is all coming to an end. I mean, I should have quit 25, 30 episodes ago, but at this point, since I've been watching this show now for 11 years, I'm going to finish the damn show, even though there are probably better things I could do with 30 hours of my life. But that's where we are.
Shine on, you crazy diamond.
Yeah. We got to celebrate somehow when I finish watching Peyton Place, because it's taken up a huge ass part of my life, man.
There's got to be a theme. There's got to be a themed cake we can all pitch in for. I don't know what that involves, but there's got to be a way.
One of those, what do they call those screens that they print out, the silk screen, but for cakes, whatever. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
It would be Mia Farrow walking away, basically. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I also have to. Now, I've heard that the quality changes because of many reasons, and you can read about them on the internet. But especially the first episode, but I'm in it to win it for the whole thing. Uzumaki Spiral, the animated version, is it. I get why some people are disappointed, but boy, oh boy, does that first episode sell it. It is so close to the manga and just fantastic. And like I said, I'm sadly there's reasons why I've heard. I haven't checked out the second episode, but I hear people are disappointed. But that bums me out, because either way, it's a monumental feat, and it's Junji Ito anime. So yay, it's spooky season. Come on, people.
Nice.
But that first episode, especially, you owe it to yourself to see. It's amazing. I don't know if anybody else on here has seen it, but
no.
Wow, it's great.
But our daughter is in Spain right now. Was talking about how she was with the international students, and she was talking to these Japanese students, and they were shocked that that we watch a fair amount of anime.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I actually want to read you her message because it was pretty funny. She says, "I got invited to sit with a group at dinner of other international students. Most of them were Japanese. They were surprised to hear that I knew what Kiki's delivery service was, and one guy asked if they were well known in America. I think they didn't know how popular Studio Ghibli movies are over
Yeah.
here."
That's it's still weird. It's strange that that is prevalent. I mean, I remember in college, my friend Hero
Mm.
was, we hung out all the time. He's still a good friend. He was like, "How do you know all this crap?" Like, I don't even know some of this stuff. Like,
Right?
I mean, we bonded over. We both like Gundam and several other things. But I was like, I don't know. I just like I liked it, and it was so hard. It was also so hard to find
Mm.
things in like late '80s, early '90s. Like
Yeah.
finding information, you had to find, and there were no anime clubs until I got into college. And you might go to a comic book store that had some stuff, and like Nausicaa was coming out, and there were a few Viz and other books. Viz had the market on all of that, and you might find a magazine or two because they were out there, mostly coming from a lot of times from like California or somewhere where they were exposed more. You
Mhm.
had stuff coming from Japan to Hawaii to California, and that was kind of the progression as far as that goes. But yeah, I it was funny. I remember you straight up was like, "How do you know this?" I was
Yeah.
like, "I don't know. I was just grasping for anything I could find."
Yeah.
But that started when I was a kid. I think I've told people before, like Speed Racer was probably one of my earliest cartoons. I didn't know it was Japanese, but I knew
No,
something was
I
different.
actually loved Speed Racer, and I've never been, big, but I did love Speed
And
Racer.
well, it's cool, Julie. If you ever want to check it out, Tubi has Mock Go 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 Go, the
Fun.
original one, which
Oh
never
yeah.
came out until recently. Like, so that's cool that you can watch it in Japanese and kind of get the difference. You missed the kind of weird. We have to talk really fast so we can match the mouths,
Oh
like
yes.
acting. But and then in kindergarten it was Space Giants. I didn't know that was from Japan, but I knew there was
Mhm.
something cool and something different. So I think it's fascinating that these other students were like, "Wow, really in America?" Because it's kind of
Right.
I thought there because there's a whole kind of cool Japan initiative to kind of get more tourists for a while. So I thought that they would know, but that's fascinating. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Everyone have a Tony, I'm sorry. I thought did you have another
No, that was
another
it. Like
yes. Okay,
Uzumaki.
very good. Cool. Everyone have a wonderful week. I don't know when we will be back next. We have not discussed it amongst ourselves because we're not that organized. But I'm sure that we'll be back soon, and we want to hear from you. So come by the Facebook page. Let us know what you thought, and let us know how you're celebrating Halloween and spooky season, and let us know how you think I should celebrate finally finishing watching all of Peyton Place, which is something that nobody dared me to do and will bring me no glory. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.